Porn's a part of our culture. It's easily accessible, and society as a whole does not frown on viewing porn in the way it did in previous generations. The media does its best to tell us that looking at porn is normal. It's talked about in sitcoms, often as casually as what's for dinner. Everybody does it. In the counseling room, I see a very different perspective. Elizabeth knew something was wrong. Her second pregnancy had been tough. Jacob said he understood and was there for her all the way through, but he was different. He seemed distant. The first pregnancy was a breeze. Elizabeth felt great almost every day. They seemed to grow closer, and their sexual relationship hardly missed a beat. The second was completely different. Elizabeth had 9 months of morning sickness and was exhausted almost all the time. Sex was not on her mind, but it was on Jacob's, at least in the beginning. Elizabeth tried to put in the effort but was too sick, tired, or uncomfortable. And Jacob, he quit trying. Now the baby was almost 6 months old, and Elizabeth was more than willing, but Jacob just didn't seem to be that interested. It was not that they never had sex, but it was infrequent, and Jacob always seemed to hurry it along. One night, Elizabeth woke up about 3 a.m. and reached over to touch Jacob, but he wasn't there. She thought he probably had gotten up to go to the restroom, but after about 15 minutes, she got up to look for him. What she found shocked her. Jacob was downstairs in his study, naked, looking at porn. He was so into what was on the computer screen, he did not even realize Elizabeth was standing in the room until she shrieked and ran out. Elizabeth tried to make sense out of something that she could not get her mind around. Yes, their sex life had suffered during the pregnancy, had not gotten back to where it had been, but he knew she was willing. She thought over and over, why would he go to that when he has me? As we talked in the counseling room a few days later, Jacob told me a story. The porn began during the pregnancy. He said he justified it easily since he and Elizabeth couldn't have sex, and then the pattern began. It was easily accessible, and he had plenty of opportunities. What he didn't count on was the high that came with the behavior. There was a thrill he had not experienced before. He knew it was wrong and that it would hurt Elizabeth if she found out, but he couldn't stop himself. Now he had a decision to make: get help or get out. Honestly, if a guy told me he had never looked at porn in his life, I would have a hard time believing him. My experience tells me that many men have looked at porn and then walked away from it. They didn't get the high. They realized porn was a really cheap substitute for sex within marriage, where there is freedom, commitment, and no guilt. Jacob pursued the behavior, and the addiction grew. A year later, Jacob told me that getting caught was the best and worst thing that had ever happened to him. The best part, well, that was he got help, and he was free from the behavior. The worst part was the pain he saw in Elizabeth. Her healing had been and still was a long process. Things were better and they were on the right path, but rebuilding trust was a difficult process. Let's talk straight here. In the past, I would have mainly aimed this at the guys, but new studies say that now up to 30% of porn addicts are women. So this is for all of us. Porn drastically distorts the sexual relationship as designed by God. Don't buy into the lie that sex God's way is not fulfilling. The exact opposite is true. God's design is the most fulfilling sex imaginable. It is a temporary fix for a much bigger issue. Temporary fixes never solve problems. They actually help you ignore the real problem and keep you from dealing with it. Porn images hang on for a very, very long time. Porn keeps you from having a normal, healthy sexual relationship. Like any addiction, porn breeds dishonesty. As a Christian, I don't think there's any way to justify porn being a part of your life. God tells us to flee sexual immorality. His word cannot be any clearer. So whether you're a man or a woman, if porn is an issue for you, today's the day it stops. Today is the day you confess to your spouse and you begin the process of healing. You'll need help. First God, then others. Get the best help available. You are playing with fire here, so treat it as such. You will never, ever regret taking that first step.